Joining us now, Rand Paul, senator from the great state of Kentucky. The media are not happy with this so-called clarification, backtracking, whatever it is. They say his little add-on, that ad-lib he did, or it could have been other people, that undercut the overall message. Rand Paul joins us now. He's been one of the few staunch defenders of this president in the Senate after this Helsinki summit. Senator Paul, thanks for being with us. Your comment after the president's clarification yesterday.
Well, I think it's important to know that there's a big picture here that people seem to be missing. Should we have conversations with our adversaries? Should we have open lines of communication with nuclear powers? And, you know, even at the darkest hours of the Cold War, Kennedy had an open line of communication with Khrushchev, and I think that may have averted nuclear war and was an important thing to have. And so people get tied up in knots over the details of what he said about intelligence gathering, but I think they miss the big point. Should he have had the meeting? Absolutely, he should have the meeting. And as far as the specifics of whether or not the investigation into Russian hacking is legitimate or not, I think the president in his mind sees two aspects to it. One aspect, the partisans are accusing him of collusion with Russia. There's no evidence of that, and he takes that very personally. So I think he does question that aspect of the intelligence investigation. The other aspect is, did the Russians hack into Hillary Clinton's email? And there seems to be considerable evidence that they did. I don't think he questions that. And so, but I think in his mind, when he was responding in Helsinki, he was also responding to these partisan attacks on him, saying he had colluded with Russia, which he vehemently denies.
Well, and since when is it treason to question the evidentiary basis for certain intel conclusions? Like now John Brennan's running to treason. Former CIA chief throwing around the word treason, and others throwing around the possibility that intel agents and top officers should not share information with the White House because it might be.
I think John Brennan's going to go down in history as the most biased and bigoted and partisan CIA head, and it should scare us all that this man had the power to eavesdrop on our every movement, our every phone call, our every email, and it turns out that he, like Peter Strzok and McCabe and Comey, were showing up every day at the CIA in charge of all of this powerful technological advances to gather information. They were showing up every day for work with this hatred of President Trump and this hatred of Republicans in general. You know, I filibustered Brennan from the very beginning. I had a bad feeling about Brennan from the very beginning, and this was years ago.
Well, and I also, again, think that people have to remember that it was Obama's failed reset, Bush rolling around Crawford Ranch with Putin in the pickup truck. I mean, they all thought it was a better idea to have a closer relationship with Russia, even if we don't agree on everything. I mean, having an open and frank line of communication, that's something that we should all encourage. And liberals used to like the idea of having. And now, suddenly, no, we practically can't. We just have to go back to isolating Russia, the Cold War, and, you know, whip it all back up into this frenzy.
And I think President Trump made a valid point. The hacking of the email and the attempt by Russians to meddle in our election happened under President Obama. What did he do? Did he do anything? No. As he saw Hillary Clinton being defeated, he spread around an innuendo and this made-up dossier that Hillary Clinton paid for. They spread that around to try to damage the incoming president. But did they do anything to stop Russians meddling in the election? No. But they've also set this up as a, you know, Hillary Clinton's been on the sour grapes, the wine tour, wine about everything about how she should be president. And yet, none of them did anything to stop this. They mainly want to use this as a way to say, oh, President Trump's not the legitimate president because she should be president because the Russians stole the election. But really, there's been no accusation that any vote was changed, that there was any hacking into our actual voting. The main accusation is that the truth was revealed through Hillary Clinton's hacked emails. And that is against the law, and I'm not condoning it and not justifying it. But we do have to put it in context. This has been going on since the beginning of time. All countries who can spy do spy on each other, and all countries who can meddle do meddle in other elections. There was a famous Time magazine cover from the time of Boris Yeltsin in, I think, 96, where Americans were in there running his campaign and spending millions of dollars trying to get Yeltsin reelected in Russia. So all countries that can meddle do meddle, and the moral of the story, what we should learn from this is we should protect ourselves. We need to have cybersecurity to protect our elections, make sure that our elections have integrity, and that foreign countries can't hack into them.
We're talking to Rand Paul here on the Laura Ingraham Show. This is what your Senate colleague Mitch McConnell said yesterday.
Senator Rubio's got a bill that targets the 2018 election, the cycle we're right in now, with, as I understand it, potential penalties if the Russians do it again. So, yeah, there's a possibility that we may well take up legislation related to this. In the meantime, I think the Russians need to know that there are a lot of us who fully understand what happened in 2016, and it really better not happen again in 2018.
What about that? Is the Rubio bill the savior here? That will you do it again? We're going to put more sanctions on you. Is that a good idea?
You know, I haven't looked at his bill, but I think there are things and messages that should be sent to Russia, and this is the message I have sent both privately and in public to Russia, is that if you think meddling was of any benefit to your country, you should reassess it. Because the thing is it's really set back relations with the United States, which I think some in Russia would like to see better relations. Some in the United States, myself included, would like to see better relations. We've set this back, our relationship 20 years to the worst part of the Cold War. So meddling, if they thought it was a benefit, it's not. Some can say, it's creating chaos. It's created a lot of controversy in our country, and we talk about nothing else, but it hasn't made relations better. In fact, sanctions have gotten worse, and our ability to communicate has gotten worse. So really, I think you can try saying we're going to punish you, but we already have lots of sanctions on them. I'm not so sure that will convince them. I think we should also try convincing them that it's in their best interest not to do it, because making relationships worse and having the possibility of accidentally falling into war with Russia is not good for either country.
Senator Paul, there are various former intel people, including John Brennan, who are raising the possibility that current intel officers should think twice before sharing intelligence with the White House, questioning the president's loyalty to the United States of America, calling this a national emergency. Several of your Democrat colleagues saying this is a national emergency, a question of questioning the loyalty of this president. What's your reaction to that?
I think that's John Brennan actually trying to commit treason by advising people who have taken an oath of office not to give information. I mean, can you imagine? This is somebody in the CIA saying all the CIA agents should just go rogue and not pay attention to the orders of both the Constitution and their superiors. No, I think it's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. I say it again, John Brennan's going to go down in history as one of the people, along with James Comey, who have greatly damaged the reputation of the intelligence community. Probably nobody in history has more greatly damaged the FBI than James Comey. He professes to love the institution, and yet he politicized the institution, first with his rambling press conferences on Hillary Clinton, second with his animus towards President Trump and his sort of working with Brennan and Clapper and others to take Hillary Clinton campaign material, the dossier that was cooked up and bought by Hillary Clinton paying a British spy who paid Russian informants. The only person we know in all of this who actually paid off Russians is actually Hillary Clinton's campaign, who paid a British spy who paid Russians to come up with this fake dossier. And so, no, I think they're going to go down in history of people who have greatly damaged. It's going to take years and years for the FBI and the CIA to recover from what James Comey and John Brennan did to them.
This is what Chuck Schumer said yesterday. Let's listen.
We're worried about what the president said publicly. We're even more worried about what happened in those 2 hours when the president was alone with Mr. Putin. Does anyone believe that he was tougher on Putin in secret than he was publicly? Why did he not want anyone else in the room if he was so sure and confident that what he did would stand the light of public scrutiny?
What about that point? I mean, the president left all this speculation let all the speculation happen, in part because there's no one else in the room. In retrospect, was that smart?
Well, I'm going to be meeting with the president. I've requested to go to the White House in the next week or two before, I'm making a trip to Russia. And I plan on meeting with the president and having a conversation with him over what went on as far as his dealings with Putin in private, and see if there's anything else that can be followed up on our trip to Russia. My goal is not to condone or not to, let the Russians say they can do anything they want. My goal is to try to have open lines of communication, and so we don't have an accidental war. We are in close proximity to Russian planes and troops in Syria. We have the North Korean issue. We have the Ukraine issue. All of these things, if you want to make them better, unless you think the answer is to, send our armies to Ukraine or send our armies to Syria or send our armies to North Korea, do involve negotiation and discussion, even with people who we, find. Look, Nixon opened up Red China, and a lot of people could have said the exact same things about the Chinese leaders in the 1970s as far as human rights abuses. And my family and others were doubtful at first. We were like, we shouldn't be doing this. But in the end, it has been better to have open lines of communication with China rather than to have war.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens after your trip to Russia. When is that going to happen, Senator?
We're going in early August. We'll be going with Cato and several of their members, and we're hoping to have meetings with Gorbachev.
Good.
We're hoping to have meetings with the foreign minister and various members of the Duma. We're also going to go to some of their museums, and one of the things we're hoping for is a small step, but something that I think is important for countries to do, and that's cultural exchange of items from their museums to our museums and vice versa. This has happened for a long time, but our communications are such that we've actually stopped cultural exchange with Russia, and I think that cultural exchange and trade are things that are important that we do. It doesn't mean world peace, but it's a step away from world war.
It was a cultural exchange program that sent me to the Soviet Union back in 1983. So if you can live in the Soviet Union in 1983, you can certainly do more exchanges now, Senator. We really appreciate your perspective and all your words of wisdom over the last few days. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thanks, Laura.